G'day guys, in this video I'm going to show you my own personal secret cinematic GoPro settings. You guys have been requesting this video ever since I did the GoPro Hero 10 as a studio camera. I will link that video up there and down below as well. Check that video out, it's a cracker video. But this video is about settings. Now I'm going to show you specific settings you need to put in your GoPro to get that cinematic look and get the most out of your GoPro. Now I do apologize, I am feeling very under the weather today. My throat is really sore, you can probably hear it. I don't think I have COVID, but I've done a couple of tests, but they've been negative, so we're gonna struggle through this and see how we go. Now these settings can be used in any situation, outside, inside, low light, high light, whatever you want. The one thing that I don't really dabble with is my shutter speed. Now you can get really technical, change your shutter speed and all that kind of thing. I don't really get too much into that. I accept the GoPro for what it is, but try and get the maximum out of it, if that makes sense, without getting too crazy with it. So let's jump into the settings. Hopefully you guys can see that. So what I also do suggest as well is, setting up different profiles. So you can go in and select different profiles for each situation. So I haven't really fine-tuned these too well, but we have like standard, basic, custom, you have slow-mo, cinematic, activity. So you can save these in here so you don't have to change your settings every time. You just have them there, bang, select what you need for that certain situation and off you go. The struggle is real. I wanted to do a weekly upload, and now I'm sick. But we're gonna get this done. Okay, so let's just have a look at kind of my standard settings, which are a go-to for kind of vlogging. Anything that's 25 frames a second. Being in the US, you could change it to 24 if you like. That's not kind of our standard here in Australia. 25 is, so that's why I have it on 25. Now for the resolution and frame rates, I typically choose the highest resolution I can, which is 5.3K at 25 frames a second. Now, that depends on your computer. If you think your computer can't handle 5.3K, maybe shoot in 4K, but I like to get the maximum resolution out of the GoPro as I can, because that way you're capturing as much detail as you can. Now, for vlogging and standard shooting, I always choose the wide lens. Now that's going to be, like it says there, 16 to 34 mil. The ultra wide is just a little bit too wide for me. You can see the fringing on the sides and it looks very GoPro-y. That's why I go for the wide. But when I did the studio video, I was on the narrow lens or linear lens. So you just have to pick what looks natural. If you're shooting, a piece to camera or something like that, you're going to want the linear lens. For stabilization, I normally put the hyper smooth on high. Boost is just a little bit too much for me. It crops in just that extra bit. You're still cropping in with high, but not as much. So I'm kind of happy with that trade-off. Everything else is kind of left to itself there. Now the Protune, this is where the biggest things will change. So you want to make sure your bitrate is onto high. It's set by default to standard. You want to change it to high. Now that's going to be the biggest difference in your quality of how your files are being recorded to the GoPro. Now, like I said before, I keep my shutter at auto. You can go in there and fiddle around with this. I just find it too fiddly. You want the GoPro to be like a grab and go camera that you can just pick up and start shooting. With the shutter speed, I'm always worried, that it's, I don't have time for that. So shutter is at auto. Now, also the EV comp, I put at -0.5. The reason I do this is the GoPro tends to be a little bit hot all round. So if we bring that down to 0.05, you're going to just stop your highlights from clipping and getting that really harsh, ugliness that you can't pull back. Putting it to 0.5 is going to eliminate that a little bit, so you will have a little bit more highlight retention in those highlights. Now white balance, I've typically kept around 5.5, depending whether you're going indoors or outdoors. Change this, don't leave it on auto. That's where you're going to get really ugly colors. If you're shooting outdoors, keep it around your 5.5, 5.6. If you're shooting indoors, depending on if it's tungsten light, change it to 35 or 4, whatever you think is going to be good. But this is key. You need to set your white balance. I know it's annoying and I know it's frustrating, but this is one of the things that's gonna get you really nice colors in the GoPro. Now here is the big secret with the GoPro, okay? If you don't take anything away from this video, take this away. Your ISO you wanna set to 100 minimum, which I think is default anyway. But your ISO, I think it normally sits around 800, 1600 by default. I could be wrong. You wanna bring this down to 400. Come on, we're almost there. So yeah, if you're outside, feel free to bring the ISO max down, but just be very careful with this because I did put my GoPro in a car and had the ISO set down to 200. And what it does, it will change your shutter speed right down low. So you'll end up with, you know, a really, how do I explain it? A flowy state where it just brings the shutter speed below 50 and it doesn't look good at all. So my recommendation is to leave it at 400. You're safe at 400 and you are in a good noise space there. So your ISO being at 800, it won't crank to 800 if it's set to 400. It'll only go to 400 and you'll be good. Now, sharpness, I've set to medium. This by default I think is high. You can set it to low if you want to add in sharpness. I did do some tests with this, but I felt the low in the GoPro sharpness looked really muddy and really gross, and I didn't really like adding sharpness in post too much, whereas I found the medium sharpness was a really good middle ground. I only have to add a little bit more sharpness in post, not a whole stack. So medium sharpness is the way to go. Now another really important thing is your color profile. Now I've set mine to flat because I know how to color grade. I love color grading, and this is going to give you a super flat image straight out of the GoPro. Now this is what you want if you're really good at color grading, or you want to get the most out of your GoPro. If you can't, you know, shooting something like natural is fine, but I really do recommend shooting in that flat profile. Everything else here is pretty standard. I am using the media mod, so obviously I have media mod things in here. Shortcuts you can change so they're handy on the screen for you. Other than that, that's pretty standard for my standard vlogging profile. Shouldn't sneeze in your hands. COVID. Come on. So the other profiles I'm going to show you is pretty much exactly my standard profile, except for I've changed the frame rate from 25 to 50. Now I will use this in the case of I want to get some B-roll with the GoPro, or you know, I want to slow it down. Sometimes I'll even vlog with 50 frames, knowing that it's not the best, but then I don't have to change settings later in case something cool happens and I can slow that down. So I won't go through every single setting again with that. Can you guys see that? Yep. I won't go through with every single setting because it's pretty much exactly the same, except for those frames per second are 50 instead of 25. Now the other profile that I do use is slow-mo, or super slow-mo, and that is 4K. So I'm pretty sure you can only go 4K at 100, so that's why it's set to that. And pretty much everything else is exactly the same, which is a beauty about the GoPro. Once you know your settings that work, just stick with them. There's no point having a whole bunch of different profiles and having all the settings different, because then you're just going to get confused and you're not going to remember what you had in here. So yeah, just have a few settings or profiles that you can just flick through. You know what the sharpness is going to be, you know what the bit rate's going to be, and then just change up your lenses and your frame rates to suit whatever activity you think you're doing. So like I said before, with the GoPro Hero 10 as a studio camera, the profile that I used for that, come on now, my hands are so cold, the screen's not even working, would have been this cinematic setting. So I'm still shooting at 5.3K excuse me, at 25, but my lens is narrow, okay? And that's a 27 millimeters, and that's what's gonna get rid of the GoPro look. You can hide it as much as you can with the narrow lens, because it's gonna get rid of that warpness for you, so it's gonna look more like a standard camera. So I hope that was really helpful for you guys. One other thing that is gonna really help you is putting filters on the front of your GoPro. So putting polarizers, NDs on the front here to make, you know, that little something something a little special, especially if you're shooting outdoors. What I would also recommend if you guys are using this as a vlogging camera or a studio camera is to get the media mod. This is going to be the best way for you to get good onboard audio. Whether you're using this little microphone, it's far better than the one on the actual GoPro, but it also gives you these ports here where you can plug in an external microphone as well. So that's it, guys. If you do have any more additional questions, leave them down in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer everybody who has a question about the GoPro, because I know there has been a lot coming through and I try to get to them all when I can. And that's it for the video, guys. I hope you did like it. If you did, please like, share it. It really does help the channel with the algorithm, and hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one.